Investors care more about a small drawdown than a big return. So according to a recent survey I did, it seems like a lot of guys want to learn how to trade for other people. And I'm not the expert at that topic for sure, but I want to tell you what I know. And that's what we'll cover in today's video. I received a lot of questions about the topic. A lot of people also complaining about the fact that you cannot trade for other people, which is completely crap. But we'll go with what is the basic and how you can make a living from this. I'll use as much as I can some precise examples that are going to make sense. But first, a touch of Ireland. Better than I expected. Comment below with your question as always. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is kind of how much money you would need to manage and what type of fee structure you can use when you trade for other people. Now, I've gone with a theoretical amount of $4,000 per month as an income you would get from your trading for other people activities. This might be high for some people. For me, it's something I consider acceptable and something you might be able to invest some money on the side as well. But let's just go with that. Now, when it comes to this, I've seen for myself two kind of fee structure you can have. The first one is something I would call a management fee plus share of the profit. Totally normal, works for some people. The second one would be something we call a profit share. In most cases, the first scenario would be you trade for other people, you get a 2% management fee, for example, and you add to that, let's say 20% of the profit you earn as a trader. And if you go to a drawdown and you come back, then you don't get, of course, all the profit. You get a profit past the drawdown. Of course, that's pretty basic. Now, I'm going to assume here as an example that you're going to make a reasonable amount of 6% per month of return. Of course, you could aim higher. But the point here is that we want to make sure we control the risk and we control the drawdown. And this won't happen every month, of course. That's what you have to keep in mind. You need to be managing around $300,000. And that might seem like a big amount. But keep in mind that you only get 20% of the whole profit that you're going to get from the trading you make. Now, before you say, well, I don't have that kind of money to trade, it's impossible, I cannot get that. Well, think about the principle that you're going to get there at some point. And that might take some time, but put it as a goal. And don't be disappointed or don't be mad because you don't have it right now. Goals exist for a reason. They exist because you can become better. And that's what you could aim for. Now, some people don't like that principle of giving you part of their capital. And that's fine. So the other kind of fee structure you could aim for is a simple profit share. Every single profit you make on the trading account you're going to trade, that's what you're going to get. Let's say 50% of the profit. I think if you trade, if you're the one making the money, that's acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, and the person might accept because they get money at the same time anyway. So you get 50% of the whole profit you make on your trading account. Based on that, you only really need around $125,000 to be able to make that kind of money. Okay, which is much lower. And sorry for the bad drawing. That's basically the sum you would need to be able to make that kind of return. And of course, keep in mind, like, it's not going to be every month. It's going to vary a lot. And that's part of the trading. That's part of your life as a trader. But those are figures as examples. So I've given you two types of fee structure. Those are pretty simple. And depending on the investor you work with, you would pick the one that you prefer and the one that makes more sense. Now, that being discussed, I think the next principle, the next question I get a lot are about the strategy you trade. And this here, there's really no rule. There's really no fixed thing you have to trade. It's going to be with what you're comfortable using. And most often than not, you're much better creating something by yourself that you understand and be able to explain what you trade. If you cannot explain the person you're trading for, why you trade this, and why it's been built that way, it's not going to work because they're not going to probably trust you, and it's going to be very hard to tell what you do. Like, you cannot just say rules from someone else you heard online or a course you took. You have to be really diligent and understand exactly what you've done and what you've been working on, your systems, to be able to explain to other people. And that's a big part that kind of people overlook sometimes. The very first time I traded for someone else, I didn't really think about explaining the drawdown and kind of what would be a typical return and drawdown to expect as I was trading. And part of it was because I didn't know how to do that. But I think it's really important to talk with the person you're going to trade for and explain what you're going to expect and what you've been seeing in the past. That could mean providing some data, providing some insights on what you know can happen and what you've experienced in the past. And that's why having a 12-month track record or something of the sort is really important. Not because you want to prove other people and tell them, well, I can make money with that. Kind of it's for that, but also for them to expect what is the worst case scenario. And if you have some backtesting data to support that, that's even better, because you might not have experienced the worst round ever, but at least you have some data to prove that this could happen. And the way I've treated this with the strategy I had is I asked the person I was trading for, what would be the proper drawdown amount you would be comfortable with? What will make sense for you? And based on this, I would adjust the risk. So instead of risking 1% as I was risking my account, I ended up risking only about 0.5% per trade. And yes, it's not a big amount, but at least they are less likely to have a big drawdown as I experienced in my own account. And things will be more smooth over time. Even though the return will lower, but usually when I trade for other people, in my experience, what I've seen is that investors care more about a small drawdown than a big return. And this video won't be a video where I give you a strategy on like how to trade, do this, make like full of money with trading for other people, because it's not how it works. So before you complain, understand that you have to develop your own style. And if I were to tell you how to trade something, that would not be how to achieve your goals of trading for other people. That would be a way for you to get stuck and not move forward. Now I got asked, what do you do when things go wrong? And when you don't really know what happens, or you have a bigger drawdown than you expected, or you've done a mistake in the market that you cannot really explain. I've been given advice that's really important on this from Ray Barros, and I think I want to include it here.
Firstly, when you show your track record or when you're trying to sell your services, you always explain what's your expected drawdown, what's your maximum drawdown, the severity of the drawdown, the number of months that you're likely to endure. If you have a situation where you are having a sudden, let's say, for example, I don't know, do you trade Forex?
Yeah, Forex.
Okay, yeah. Forex, okay. So remember when the Swiss franc against the US dollar, they came collapsing, and that happened to be long that day, whatever it was, and I had a larger than normal loss. First thing I would do is pick up the phone and I would call every single investor and say, listen, we've just had a humongous drawdown. It's outside the norm. I'm ringing you to explain why. I also do that for humongous profits. So that way they don't get conditioned thinking, okay, he's only going to pick up the phone when there's something wrong, right?
That's a very good point. One of the best skills you can have, I think, when you trade for other people is not to trade, although that's part of it. The other part is communication. And that kind of goes into why I stopped trading for other people. Because I realized that while it looks nice to trade for someone else, and why it looks super awesome and no work involved, there's a lot of communication involved. And there's a lot of back and forth and sending reports sometimes and telling the person what happened. And depending on who you pick as an investor, you might be disappointed a little bit. And not to say that it's a bad thing to trade for other people. I really like the experience. But I also like the freedom of traveling, not having to worry about missing trades too much, even though they affect me now. But they affect me way less than if I was trading for someone else, and I knew I didn't give my best 100% of the time. The mindset you experience when you trade for someone else is, in my opinion, kind of better, because you see it as a job, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, you have a big responsibility to do things right, and to ensure that things are taken care of. And you cannot be complacent. You cannot say, well, for these couple of next month, I'm going to work on my trading and not trade. Because the investor is going to be pissed off. Unless you explain before and you communicate. Hence why communication is a big factor into it. And you have to set expectations first. And if possible, even exceed them. Because that's how you satisfy people overall. I hope that makes sense. If you guys have any question about how to trade for other people, comment below. And I want to remind you that we did a video a few days ago or weeks ago about how to get investors to trade, my 2 cents on that. Also, we had an interview with Jack Schwager on how to get investors as well, with his platform Fundseeder, which I also recommend. Now, I want to bring you guys back to this morning. I'm just about to pack my suitcase and stuff before I leave for Montreal tomorrow morning. And that's going to be a long flight, but I've been exploring a little bit outside in Dublin today. I had a chance to try some good food and more. So let me put back that hat and we'll be back in Dublin. Good afternoon, traders. Welcome back to Dublin in Ireland. Today I made it to the city center. A few things I want to explore this afternoon, but first, let's find some food. So I've been walking around for a few minutes. Of course, I was trying to find some Irish food, which I think I found. First place I've come across was probably the best. I'll try to go back there and enjoy a good lunch. So I went with the Irish lamb stew and also a beer. Looks really good, smells awesome, so I'll try it out. This is quite good, kind of a mix of mashed potatoes with some meat, some vegetable and some bread. I'll be honest, this tastes as much, so I'm gonna add some pepper and it's gonna make it better. But it's still very good. Lunch costed 16 euros, which I think is pretty normal here. And now I'm gonna try to see what I can do around here. I think coffee. Someone next door for a dessert, but I didn't expect it to be that big. It's pretty crazy.
If you want some never, just let me know.
Alright, so after walking for 8 hours, kidding, just maybe 20 minutes or so, I walked quite a lot. I've been able to see all the different streets around, and it's pretty cool. It's just amazing how many pubs or bars there are. It's like everywhere you look, there's like a new pub you didn't see before. There's also where I am a lot of different shops, like Asian grocery stores, Indian grocery store, a lot of different things, which is making it pretty cool. It's not just Irish store, but a lot of mix. But I'm just walking around and take a look at what that looks like. Hopefully that satisfied your question, and if so, give a like for the video today if you enjoyed, comment below with your thought, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Ciao!